Welcome, everyone. I am so pleased to moderate the roundtable we're going to have today, a discussion sharing some of the work, some of the marvelous work that the P8 Collective has been working on. The Public Poetry Gallery was conceived by P8, a collection of multidisciplinary artists and designers brought together to explore alternative ways to share poetry and to make it more available and accessible in public spaces in both a physical and digital or phygital way. I'd like to invite Luigi Ferrara to expand on P8 and its beginnings.
Thanks, Randy. During the pandemic, I noticed that many of my designer colleagues had begun to post poetry on their Facebook pages. A few years ago, I myself had included poetry and design into an art installation for Nuit Blanche, titled The Lovers of the River Almonda. I invited this group of designers and artists for a global conversation. I thought, let's get together and talk about why we're doing this. And we decided to form a group called P8 that would be dedicated to showing poetry and inviting people into the form of creativity that is poetry and taking that poetry out into the public realm. We began the process by adding poetry and photography to the walls at the School of Design so that we could welcome back students after the pandemic with their return to the building to this kind of poetry in the public space of the building. For our second project, we expanded the group and invited more people to become involved, where we put poetry into a virtual digital space that we called the Public Poetry Gallery. And we thought that we would show it at DigiFest, but it's going to be an ongoing construction. And it was constructed by a team of students and staff at George Brown College, led by Emmanuel Mello, Cicely Lang, and Michael Nguyen. So we're bringing this work into virtual space, this poetry into the virtual space, where people will be able to walk around and experience poems in a new and completely different way. Before we show you the virtual Public Poetry Gallery, we'd like to take you to the School of Design campus to see the poetry that we put up on the walls and to see how the school's been transformed from it. P8 is a group of designers that have this extra interest in poetry. Here at the School of Design, we had started to put up these graphic images from the archives of the City of Toronto of the waterfront, because our campus for the School of Design is located at Toronto's waterfront. And I thought it would be an incredible overlay to have these designers who are poets create small poems to go with the images.
Typically, poetry is a very personal experience, but it doesn't always have to be. It can be a shared experience. And the idea for maybe moving forward is that we can find ways to engage and interact with people in the public realm who enjoy poetry, or maybe even want to make it themselves, or perhaps you've written a few lines and somebody else can finish the poem. There are a lot of different ways we can be playing this. So I really hope that this idea of our public experiences can be a shared experience for everybody as we move forward with P8.
We specifically designed kind of 13 rooms that are around a rotunda, each with a different shape, and it asked the poets to create poems that would inhabit those spaces, so that when the public would come into the gallery, they'd come into each of the different rooms and experience the poetry in the rooms in a new way. So not having the opportunity to put poetry directly into public space like we did with the hallways here at the school, we imagined and built a virtual public space that the poems could be put into. What's exciting, I think, is where we're heading with this next P8 project after the Public Poetry Gallery, because we're trying to head towards putting the poetry out in the waterfront Toronto area. So out of the school, right into the public space. I really am excited that maybe our next project out into the waterfront will take poetry from all of our students at the School of Design, forcing them to extend beyond their typical, say, graphic design or game design experience and extend that out through poetry, but in a participatory way that then would see it visualized.
Thank you, Luigi. As Luigi mentioned, the gallery, it's a virtual space and it features 12 rooms, each with a different number of walls. And these rooms have been transformed by words and images, bringing poetry to life. And I'll be inviting the P8 poets to share their poems and inspiration with us today. And that includes Gianna Patriarca, Andrew Mcluhan, Corrado Paina, Samantha Sanella, Luigi, Rafaela Colombo, and Lori Andes. So the first person we'll be speaking with is Gianna Patriarca. Hi, Gianna. How are you?
Hi, Randy. I'm fine. How are you? Lovely
Good.
to see you again.
Gianna, I'm just going to introduce you to the audience with a bit of your background. You're an award-winning author of 11 books, poetry, children's literature, and short fiction, and your work is extensively anthologized and adapted for Canadian stage, CBC radio, drama, and featured in numerous documentaries. Your new poems, This Way Home, is launching this month, and next year your children's book, Nona and the Girls Next Door, will be published. Your room features the shape of a triangle, 3-sided walls, and features 10 books that represent part of your continuing struggle to understand the mystery of your identity and voice as an immigrant Italian woman living in Canada since the age of 9. Your poetry is rooted in the ordinary and extraordinary experience of being human and all that life offers in the light and in the dark.
Oh. Well, the room looks beautiful, by the way. I'm totally blown away and honored by this and being part of this experience. It really is, yeah, it's a wonderful, wonderful thing, and I'm truly grateful. My poetry is what it is. I write about life as I live it and see it and experience it, and it's not going to change the world, but it might just give you a moment of reflection or thought or feeling or a tear or a smile. And I think that as writers, that's what we do. We try to, affect an emotion, a sensibility in others. And it's as simple as that.
Well, Gianna, I personally, from my observations and my reading, your poems are so achingly and honestly personal, and you seem to be fearless in exposing your feelings and life experiences. But it's one thing to have them revealed and somewhat contained within the pages of your books and to perhaps a smaller audience. How do you feel about now displaying them in a virtual space to potentially a much larger and broader audience?
Well, it's wonderful. I mean, I've been writing for a very long time, Randy, and it's not actually been very easy to get one's voice published. Certainly not in my experience. So to see this happen is really something I would never have imagined. In terms of my work being very personal, it is very personal because I start from my experiences, but I observe the lives and the world around me as I see it and experience it, and I write about that. So it isn't just revealing my soul and my heart, but it is an exploration into what others may be feeling at the same time as I observe life. Sometimes you're a little bit reluctant to share everything that you feel, but I think that if a writer is truly honest about what they are doing And for me, writing has always been an act of survival. It has been something that I have done honestly to try to understand who I am as a woman, as an immigrant, as a writer. And I don't think that you can lie about that. Mm-hmm. So sometimes, you know, you have to expose the wounds and you have to expose the scars. And hopefully in time, they will fade a little bit.
Gianna, you've exposed so much. I hope you've saved a little bit for yourself.
You always save a little for yourself, Randy. You can't tell it all.
Just one last quick question. How do you think your mother and her generation would feel about seeing your poems in this virtual environment?
I think they would be totally ecstatic, you know, yeah. Because there was so much silence for so many decades among those women, among women like my mother, that to have a visibility, to have a voice now, I think they would dance for joy.
Well, I'm so pleased for you that you were able to get your message out, Gianna. Thank you very much for speaking with us today.
Thank you, Randy.
So our next discussion is with Andrew Mcluhan. And just a bit of introduction on Andrew. He's a poet, author, researcher, and teacher, founder and director of the Mcluhan Institute, which is dedicated to preserving and bringing forward the pioneering work of Marshall and Eric Mcluhan. Andrew's room features the shape of a pentagon, 5-sided walls, and the title of Andrew's room is A Poem in 5 Parts. It was written as a poetic expression of the 5 canons of rhetoric, rhetoric being 1/3 of the classic trivium, one of the 7 liberal arts. It is part of a larger project expressing each of the 7 liberal arts in poetry. Welcome, Andrew.
Thank you, Randy. Thank you very much.
So, Andrew, you've written a poetic expression of the 5 canons of rhetoric, which to some, certainly to me, seems like a daunting intellectual exercise. What drew you to this topic?
Yeah, it was daunting. I actually took the easiest one first. It's part of a larger project, as you mentioned, to look at the 7 liberal arts. Rhetoric being the one I'm most familiar with of the trivium, the 3, which is rhetoric, grammar, and dialectic. And then there's arithmetic, astronomy, geometry, and music. And I wanted to challenge myself. Like Gianna, poetry for me is about exploration. And most times it's about an interior exploration. But it's also fun to turn that poetic eye outwards and look at things around you and other subjects other than just yourself. And that's the spirit behind this, is to look at a field of study and to challenge myself to research it and try and express it or express things about it in poetry.
Mm-hmm. Well, you've explained that rhetoric, as being 1/3 of the classic trivium, one of the 7 liberal arts. How did you go about expressing and personalizing the canons with your poems?
Yeah, well, I mean, of course, I did a little bit of research into what they call canons are just these 5 divisions of rhetoric. So rhetoric is the classic discipline of persuasion. And it's made up of these 5 parts: invention, arrangement, style, memory, and delivery. So for each of the 5 parts, I looked at different sources, classic texts on it. I mean, I didn't do a ton of research, but enough to familiarize myself. And after sort of preparing the field a little bit, I just sat down to write. And the poems just kind of almost write themselves if you do the right preparation, I think. The way they came out in this virtual room, I think is fantastic. I'm so thrilled.
I was going to ask you about that, Andrew. What were your initial thoughts on how to best present the poems within your space?
Well, the thing is, as soon as I heard about this project with the rooms and they each had sides, I immediately asked if I could have the 5-sided room, because I had this suite of poems on rhetoric in the 5 parts. And then I just imagined bringing them into that space. And my idea was to present them both as text and as recordings of me reading them in a kind of persona. And so that's what I've done. And I'm really glad to put them out there because for me, poetry is about sharing. Like Gianna, I've been writing poetry for most of my life. And I love performance. So it's all about sharing for me and, you know, sharing experience, and hopefully people enjoy it.
Well, certainly through this medium, you're going to have a very broad audience.
Well, that would be great.
Well, I'm delighted to talk to you, Andrew, and I really look forward to reading them all and seeing them in perhaps book format someday as well.
Same. Thank you, Randy. I haven't started any of the other parts yet, but I'm looking forward to it. It's, as I said, I took the easiest one first because I am most familiar with rhetoric given my background, but I'll do grammar and dialectic next, and then tackle the quadrivium, which is going to be a whole other kettle of fish, as it were.
So you're doing it fractionally. You've done a fifth of the third of the 7.
I guess so.
Well, good luck reaching the end of that. Thank you so much, Andrew. It was
Thank you, Randy.
speaking to you. That was great speaking to Andrew. The next person we're going to talk to is Corrado Paina. And a little intro on Corrado. He's an Italian-born poet, and he's based in Toronto, and the author of several books of poetry and short stories in both Italian and English. He's currently serving as the executive director of the Italian Chamber of Commerce in Toronto. His room is a heptagon, 7 sides, 7 walls. His work combines a poem reading in English and Italian set with the soundscape of the body through a beating heart. And we're going to see some of that now.
Vedo un mondo che continua, di stormi distesi in languidi fischi, di rami in serena preghiera, di chiese che offrono le pareti al pittore.
Randy, I just wanted to let you know that Corrado hasn't been able to join us.
Oh.
So we're just going to enjoy his room for a little bit. And maybe I can just describe it a little bit on his behalf. Corrado has been writing poems, over the last number of years. He's had to deal with health problems. So the poems are about illness and dealing with your health problems, and so the room is designed with this kind of tree of life at the center, and you can hear and listen to the poems, which are about getting well from illness, about suffering with illness, and just how illness is part of our lives and how we deal with it. So. Unfortunately, he just couldn't make it at the last second. So, just wanted to share that with everyone, and everyone will be able to see the room as well when the thing launches live.
Yeah, well, it's good to experience the video or the imagery, which, with your explanation was very helpful, Luigi. Thank you.
Okay, so I think we can move on to the next person, maybe. Yeah.
Okay. Well, the next person we're going to be speaking with is Samantha Sinella, and I'd like to welcome Samantha. She's an architect, designer, poet, painter, a multidisciplinary person. She's a former professor at Ryerson University, former CEO of the Design Exchange, and is now managing director of Cushman & Wakefield. Samantha's room features the shape of an octagon, 8-sided walls, of course, and her poems are inspired by the fleeting moments in life that most people take for granted. Samantha, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Just you know, people are going to see once they get into your space that you've accompanied all of your poems with your beautiful watercolors. And I was just wondering, is that a constant with all of your work?
It's 99% constant. Occasionally there's a poem or painting that doesn't have a mate, but for example, you're seeing these rabbits right now. The rabbits are always autobiographical for me. So there is generally a poem and a painting, and it's usually about what's happening with me that day. So they really are a journey of my life. As a person who constructs spaces, architect and designer, all the poems and the paintings are the things that we don't construct. So they're always usually about nature, small animals, these little moments of joy that we should be able to find no matter who we are or where we are in the world. And part of that comes from, as Gianna said, from not having a voice and from finding your own voice. And then also about trying to find happiness. So for me, it's sort of this idea that happiness is something you just look for every day. And if you can find a little moment of happiness every day, then you'll be happy. So, and I've had a lot of grief in my life, and I've had to overcome quite a few things that were hard. But every day I would just wake up grateful, and then I look for these little moments of happiness. And then I paint and write generally at nighttime. And so that's when I reflect back on the day and find what made me happy.
That's a beautiful description of your process. And I think it explains a lot about what we're seeing. I'm just wondering if you see the combination of the paintings and the poems as an important symbiotic relationship. In other words, can one exist separately from the other? I mean, you answered that a little bit. Or do you think this is a classic case of the whole being greater than the sum of the parts?
I do think the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. And I never used to put them out there for the public, and I started doing that about 1.5 years ago, or when COVID started. And people resonate with one or the other, and some people resonate with both. For me, when I write a poem and it's missing the painting or vice versa, it always does feel like, as you see a half a rabbit there, only half expressed. So for me to have that full expression, it's both visual and linguistic with the words. I do feel like they both float around in my head at the same time. So there's generally a tornado of words and images in there. And it's only when I paint them and write them that the tornado calms down.
Well, in that one with the rabbit, I guess half the rabbit would be a bit.
That's funny.
I just wondering if you could explain one of your examples and explain how the components work together, with the paintings and the words.
Sure. There's a good example in the gallery that's projected, and also the projection is sort of animated, thanks to one of my dear friends who animated the painting for me, Eric Jakowski. It was a moment in nature where I was near a river, and this was my view for a period of time, because I was actually also teaching some other women a watercolor lesson. And I was listening to the frogs and the crickets and the sound of the water. And the poem is about that. It's about finding inner peace and silence. And then here's the matching painting, because I was staring at it for a few hours. So it's honestly, I'm a very simple person in a lot of ways, or maybe I just take the complex and make it simple, which is also my professional job. So,
well, as a designer, I guess you've distilled it to its essence.
Yes, that's very true. Yes.
Well, thank you, Samantha, very much for sharing your thoughts, and your work is lovely.
Thank you.
Next, we're going to speak with Rafaela Colombo, and Rafaela she's based in Milan, where she's been teaching landscape architecture. She's also been a correspondent for international magazines. She's lived in several countries and has written many books on poetry using unrevealed pseudonyms. Rafaela's room features the shape of a decagon, 10-sided walls, and the title of her room is The Garden of Fragility, a series of poems recorded in English and Italian, reflecting nighttime with clouds on the water and rainwater falling down. Welcome, Rafaela. It's good to talk to you again.
Thank you very much, Randy. Thank you very much to all of you. And here we are. And I would like to start from one word for my garden, that is Garden of Fragility. And it's not about landscape. Landscape can be also natural, but I want to speak about something that is an anthropic construction. So, a garden. And this garden is done by a lot of fragilities, because the word is, for me, passion, that derives from the Latin passio, passionis, that means also passus, so to suffer. And for this, an old meaning about passion is also in contraposition with action, and it describes a specific condition that is a condition of passivity. And also, it has a specific physical effect. Also, another one that is a very contemporary meaning for passion, when describes an intense and sometimes violent feeling, and mostly is related to attraction towards something or someone. In this specific meaning, when passion is violent, can disturb physical balance and the abilities of control. In another meaning, passion describes a strong, irrational desire for someone or something, capable of dominating a person. In this sense, this is my garden and my poems. So my poems want to understand and underline this kind of controversial feelings, every time related to strong passions. That's why I speak about love in this poem, but love is extreme, and there are passions of contrarieties. And also, I would like to explore in depth this kind of fragilities. So that's why my room is without colors. There are only the voice, my voice, the rain, the clouds, and the darkness. And that's it.
You know, Rafaela, you're a designer and a teacher, but you've also described yourself in your bio as an explorer, an urban devil, and a poet. I'm very interested in how the inner explorer and the urban devil found their way into your poems. Can you explain that to us?
Yes, I invented this word that is urban devil, because I love to ask questions and to try to understand different questions, to indicate something that is not so usual, maybe something that is absolutely unusual and unexplored. This is what I love. And that's why I every time try to introduce this sense of instability and fragility, because I don't want to be perfect. So my poems are very, in this sense, they introduce complexities and they don't give answers at all. On the contrary, they ask questions, and I want to explore questions. In this sense, I am a urban devil, because I do the same in my job as a landscape architect, and of course I plan public spaces, so towards the cities, I want to ask different questions, not the same, because if we ask the same questions, we will have the same answers, and it's exactly what I don't want to do.
Well, I'm glad to hear you use the words instability along with fragility, because I think your space perfectly expresses that. It's a wonderful environment, Rafaela.
Thank you very much, Randy. And I started also from an Italian architecture, so an excellent architecture was the Pantheon, no? When you know perfectly, there is only one hole in the roof, and you can experience directly the weather, so the rain, the sun, etc. It's the same in my room. You can walk over the water, and you can feel exactly the rain coming down, and you can see the reflection of the clouds, and that's it. But you are inside the silence. So the silence for me is very important.
Well, it's very well executed, and I congratulate you, Rafaela. Thank you very much.
Thank
Ciao.
you very much, Randy. To you. Ciao.
Okay, our next presenter is Lori Endis, and as background, Lori's an interdisciplinary designer, filmmaker, educator, and she has a background in dance and theater. Lori's room features 11-sided walls, and the title of the room is Outside In. This work celebrates origins of art and design in nature. The poetry reflects on the strength, beauty, and fragility again, of our natural environment, and how humans are either removed from or instinctually connected by nature and the wisdom it offers. Welcome, Lori.
Hi, Randy. How are you?
Good. Good. I think
Very
everybody's
exciting to be sharing.
by seeing your space.
Yeah, every time I come in, it looks different. It's quite amazing because in the virtual space, it seems to be quite infinite in the possibilities.
Well, it just, for an opening question, you're also a dancer, and it seems to me that the qualities you attributed to nature, strength, beauty, and fragility, apply equally to the world of dance. Is this a connection you may have consciously or subconsciously expressed in your virtual space? And if so, please explain how.
I think there's something to that, because for me, this project really started with the idea that humanity has separated itself from the natural environment. So I wanted to do an exploration on that theme. And as I started the project, I was filming, and I was moving when I was filming. And then it reminded me that movement is essential to almost everything that I do. And in this sense, when I was able to create a virtual space, I got very excited about the fact that I could combine poetry, film, and design into one space, and movement tended to be a theme throughout it. And I think these elements are not that different from dance, in the sense that you're putting yourself out there on a stage. And poetry, when you make poetry, you are revealing an inner world, and when you dance, it's really the same thing.
Well, I understand, I think from previous conversations with you, that you're a canoeist. And I was just wondering if you could describe the collage of images of nature that you used in your room, which I understand may have been gathered from all parts of Canada, and your concept for integrating them into a virtual space.
Yes, I do love paddling. And actually, the image we see right now, I'm paddling and filming at the same time. And for water, when I explored water on film, the theme came out of resilience. And so the poem then became all about resilience, and water being the metaphor for that. And then when the air part came in, that is literally me flying over a forest on a gondola. And the air part for me was a lot about connectivity. So the theme of connecting to nature, connecting to people came through while I was filming over the trees. And then the third theme was Earth itself. And that for me was a lot more about power, and the power that you feel when you walk on the Earth, and the power that the Earth has over us, and the power that we have over the Earth. So that's really the three elements. And I'm excited to see how these rooms evolve over the next few months, because as you know, we're still working on integrating certain elements. And I'm really, really thrilled to be working with our design team on this, Emmanuel and Cicely.
Mm-hmm. Well, those elements you mentioned are, they're very topical, considering the kind of abuse that our given environment is under these days. And especially when you talk about water having resilience, it needs it. And I think your work here is very, very timely, and I think it's fantastic.
Thank you. I really felt that until humans fully accept that we are not separate from nature, or necessarily more special than nature, many of our intrinsic problems won't be solved. And not that I was trying to be political in this poetry, I was actually really just trying to create a room that made people feel serene, a place that people would feel comfortable and connect to nature virtually, which seemed to be a bit of a theme throughout the pandemic. People flocked to nature again during times of trouble.
Well, you know, I think your images get across the message very clearly, and it's wonderful work, Laurie.
Well, thanks, Randy. I've been enjoying the process.
I'm told that we're a bit ahead of schedule, so there's no rush. Is there anything more you want to say about your space or the process in deciding how to use it?
Yeah, I think for me, being able to make a film first and then develop the poetry afterwards was just by happenstance, because I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to write about. I initially wrote a poem, but it didn't work with the theme. So for me, the process was brand new and very exciting, something I've never, ever explored before, where I could mix three very, very unique elements together. And for me, this was a wonderful experience, and I didn't know where it was going to lead me. So there was no pre-plan. It was completely organic, like the space itself.
Well, you probably ended up where you subconsciously needed to go.
I think I did, actually, yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Laurie. It was a pleasure to talk to you. Hi, back again, and I understand that it's my turn to talk about my poem. So perhaps I'll just talk over the video once it starts. My public poetry room is a cylinder, and the title is A Point in Time. It's for me, it's personal, that term, because it was a common thing said by my architectural profs, and it fascinated me, and yet I found it perplexing in that its definition was always so elastic. Did they mean, was it a precise second or moment, a day, a year, or an era such as Renaissance? Obviously, the definition of such points is important. We can't go back to them. We can't retouch or re-experience them. And we have, as a consequence, we've had to develop reference standards to help us. Days of the week, months, years, calendars, logs, diaries, history books, etc. I later had a flash of understanding about the flow of time and our inability to revisit it when I came across the words of the ancient Greek philosopher Heraclitus. He said, you cannot step into, and I guess this is paraphrasing because I don't know if they have the exact words from back then, but he said, you cannot step into the same river twice, meaning that the world constantly changes and no two situations are exactly the same. As water flows in a river, one cannot touch the exact same water twice. So in my space, I've not used any images, but instead relied upon text to explore time as an examination of time as dynamic, fluid, unstoppable, relentless. This is achieved through combined use of movement and pauses on the floor and the cylinder wall, the speed of the sequencing, scale and scale changes, and strategic focus or highlighting of keywords and the interplay and coverage of surfaces with the poem's text. So time is never stopping in this space, it's moving around. And because it's a cylinder, that was a very important concept for me because the shape obviously has no walls, no planes, corners or edges to constrain, control, or otherwise constrict the continuous flow of the poem. The words are a river of words flowing relentlessly into the future. I see we didn't get to the ending of the poem, the climax for the word time. Maybe there's some technical difficulties in that, but should be said that the this particular project, this space is a work in progress, and over time we will be refining it so that it's completed right to the end. I see that we're repeating what was initially shown. So perhaps maybe we can just jump forward and speak to Luigi, bring Luigi back so we can talk about his poem. So we'll wait this out till Luigi comes back for our discussion. Hi, Luigi.
Hi, Randy. Good to see you again, and incredible to see your room. I remember the meetings where you described what it would be like, and to see how our team has turned it into, has wrapped the room with your words. It's lovely to see.
Well, I think they have done a wonderful job and quite true to the initial concept. So unfortunately, we're not seeing the ending of this, but maybe while we're watching this, I can give the audience a bit of an intro to you and your work. So Luigi, you led the creation of P8 and the development of the virtual public gallery, and of course, obviously your work should be featured in there. And your room, it's the shape of an octagon with non-sided walls. And the title of your work is Shadows of Our Forgotten Ancestors. And the poems are about family who are from a particular town in Italy called Grotte, meaning caves, and the collection of 10 houses that were in caves and now scattered around the world. I'm just wondering whether you can maybe comment on your collection of poems, which I find to be, very ambitious, a sprawling concept linking descendants of a small community in Italy with a resulting Italian diaspora and spread worldwide like seeds tossed into the wind. What inspired your concept?
So oddly, when I was in high school, I worked at the Art Gallery of Ontario, and I saw this film called Shadow of Our Forgotten Ancestors that's made by a very famous Ukrainian filmmaker. And the film left a really deep impression on me because it documented life in rural Ukraine in such a realistic way. And it reminded me of my own father's life. My father was born in this town called Grotte, which means caves. My mom was born in a town called Torre de Passere, which means Tower of the Swallows. And they met each other in these caves during the Second World War, because that's where everyone would have to run when the bombs fell. And that's actually how they met and fell in love, was sitting together while the bombs were falling in these caves. And when I had the opportunity with the Public Poetry Gallery, it just came to me. My son had gotten a free subscription to Ancestry, and we were looking at all our relatives on my side and my wife's side, and all of these memories kept flooding back. And I realized that in each of us there is this hall of ancestors. And what I'm so excited about with the room was to be able to create that hall and to see the images of all these people that were scattered all around the world, to Venezuela, to Australia, to Canada, to the United States, who had lived, basically over these caves for thousands of years previous to that. And now the modern world had flung them everywhere. So, all of these people have now passed, and really the only place they live is in me and in their descendants. And to have them be able to be seen in this hall. And what I did was I wrote 3 short lines about their life to try to summarize their life. And in an odd way, only in poetry can you do that. And so, in this case, this is my dad that you're looking at. And, he had to, after the war, because he could not work the fields in Italy because there were mines in the fields. He'd actually lost fingers in his hands from those mines. He ended up going as an indentured farmhand to Smith Falls, where his uncle lived. And, the poem is just about, what his life was all about. And most of our lives are these lives that are not known to many people, except those that are in our family realm. And his was one of those lives. And in a way, these poems are just honoring all those lives of all those people. And it's so odd when we think about it, because, you know, who would have ever thought that in their life that they would have, especially at that time, that they would have ended up thousands of miles away living in a different world. Like Smith Falls is thousands of miles away from Abruzzo in Italy. And when I think of one of the other people, Berardino, who left as a teenager and was alone in Australia. And I just think of my own trip to Australia, where I've never felt like I had gone so far in my life. And here was this person living all alone in Australia, trying to make his life. So the poems are, in a way, a tribute to these normal lives of people, and what they did with them and what they found as they were scattered. And you know, recently I was able to see the Dune movie, and you know, if you follow the Dune stories, there's a part of the story where the people that are scattered around the universe kind of come back. And in a way, these are the people that were scattered, coming back to one place.
Well, Luigi, what I really want to know is, are you in touch with any or all of these descendants?
So I do know most of the descendants of the people that are here. In fact, as we were preparing the room, and I had been finding through my parents' pictures, images of them. The ones that you're seeing now are all in New England. And you know, I had posted their pictures, and their relatives who I see on Facebook immediately contacted me, and we started talking again. But you know, it's yes, I do know most of the people, thanks to the beauty of the virtual sphere that Facebook is.
So how do you think they feel about having their stories so connected and so unexpectedly connected?
So Randy, I can't hear you you're speaking, right?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me now?
Are you on mute, Randy?
No. No, I'm not.
Oh, maybe it's my earpiece. 1 second. Sorry about that, but the technology. Randy, are you speaking?
I am now. Can you hear me?
Okay, I can hear you now.
So the question I had...
The battery must have gone out on my earpiece.
Just a really important question is, how do you think the descendants feel about having their stories so unexpectedly connected, not only through your poetry, but perhaps also seeing it displayed in virtual space?
You know, I actually don't know how people will react, and how people will react to the way I summarized one of their descendants' life. But it comes from my memories of their particular story in the way I knew them. So it may not be the way that they knew them, but it's the way I remember them and my experience with them, because at different points in my life, I had the chance to be with them, even though they were so far away from me. There were moments when we came together, and through those moments, I understood their story and what it meant to me.
Well, you know, you perhaps summarized it in few words, but I think the sum of everything here, you know, connected virtually, visually, is fantastic, and it says a lot more than just a few lines of poetry.
Thanks, Randy. The other thing, you know, we're looking at these in the previews, but I just want to give the audience a sense that the immersive experience when you're going to go into the live room is somewhat different, because you'll hear the sound, the music, and it's a much more immersive feeling. Then we're just giving you a teaser and a preview, in essence, of the rooms. The room will be really going live, you know, sometime next year when we have our second salon. And the amazing thing about the virtual space is that we can keep growing this, and we can keep adding rooms and keep sharing different experiences and letting people in and spend time there at their own leisure to understand and feel the beauty that is poetry. I think they're also asking if we might go into some of the other rooms. There's rooms by Ari Matseo and Alfredo Hidalgo. They can't be with us today, but maybe we can go into Ari's room.
And I guess a bit of background on Ari's room is that it's inspired by skateboarding.
So Ari is a really unique person who's a kind of combination performer, designer, script writer. You know, she's studied theater, communications, design, and she's really always at the edge of participatory design processes. Things like body storming and things of that nature. So in this case, I think there's a piece of music with the poetry that she had created by someone to accompany her poem. And maybe we should head out to Alfredo's room to give a sense of Alfredo's room. And Randy, I wanted to ask you, like, you know, what did you think when I reached out to you? You were one of the first people I reached out to about getting together to talk about poetry.
Well, you know, Luigi, it came out of the blue. Your question, because you're asking me now that I'm mostly retired what I'm doing with myself, and I mentioned that I'm writing poetry, and your response was poetry. And then you asked me if I'd like to get involved in something that wasn't really well described, let's say, but I automatically said yes. I looked at it as an opportunity. It was as if I've described it as a grand piano fell out of the sky and landed at my feet. And it was sort of it was a sign that this was a great endeavor. You know, it's a fantastic opportunity that you've developed for all of us, and it's exciting. I look forward to doing more with this group of fantastic and skilled, dedicated artists and poets.
So Alfredo, as you can see from the room here, Alfredo is actually originally from Chile. He's a refugee, as my wife is from Chile, from the fascist coup in '73. Except Alfredo ended up in Mexico and lives and works in Guadalajara. He's an architect. And this, I think this set of poems is really a tribute to his father, who experienced the refugee reality of having to leave your country when you don't want to and having to go set up a new life elsewhere in the world. And so I think he recently passed, and Alfredo has written a set of poems and done a set of drawings that really are a reminder of you know, both the life in Guadalajara and the life before that in Chile. So as these images are staying on, maybe we, you know, this is a great moment to start to, you know, just thank everyone for everybody participating and getting involved in this experiment that we call P8, of taking poetry and bringing it out into the world. The idea is to keep engaging people. The space that you're seeing on the screen is going to continue to be developed. It's not yet fully finished in its coding. So we have to make it, right now it's only on PC, but we have to make it ready to be able to go on Mac. And the idea is eventually to post it as a world, and for people to be able to really go into it and spend time in it and immerse themselves, to be able to see the imagery, hear the words, read the words, and experience poetry in this public virtual space. Super excited that maybe by the time we do the next DigiFest, that we'll actually be taking the poetry out into the public realm at the waterfront. Randy, your thoughts on like this next evolution of what we're going to try to do?
Well, I think that's the natural progression that we originally talked about is how to get poetry out into the public space where, you know, it has a physical reality that people can experience in a public context. And I think we need more poetry. We need more art of all kinds out in the public space. And this is a great approach. And I'm really looking forward to that next stage, Luigi.
Yeah, so if you're interested in reading the poems, you'll be able to find them at the Toronto digifest.ca site. We have the poems up already so that you can read them in anticipation. And right now, I think it's a great moment to open it up to questions and to bring all the poets back in for a discussion and some thoughts and response to the people's reactions. Okay, so we got a question coming in. How can other poets or creators connect or get involved with P8? So I'll answer that one. All you have to do, express interest, because this is an inclusive poetry process. It's about including people and encouraging people to become involved. And so, yes, the great thing about the virtual space is we have limitless virtual space that we can, add poetry to. If you want to be involved in a deeper way, especially in getting the poetry into public space, just reach out. You can reach out emailing me at lferrara@georgebrown.ca, but you can also, I think, reach out to any one of the members of P8 if you find their emails and just ask to be part of it. So maybe there aren't any other questions. Just wanted to maybe get some feedback and reactions now that everyone's seen each other's rooms, because I'm not sure everyone had a chance before today to see them. Thoughts, anyone? Samantha?
I honestly was blown away by some of the rooms because we have not really seen them completed. And, they're also different. And I feel like I got a glimpse into people's souls with them. So I thought that was pretty remarkable. And kudos to the George Brown team who built the digital environments. I mean, I just told your team what inspired me, and they sort of had free reign, and they made the wildflower garden and, the walls into rocks and that kind of thing. And I thought, oh, that sort of does look like the inside of my head. So that was pretty good.
They kind of read your mind, Samantha?
Yeah, I might have too many rocks inside my head. Certainly a wildflower garden.
Jenna, I want to ask you, what was it like to hang out with a bunch of designers for a while?
Luigi, I can tell you, this is an experience that I didn't think I would ever have. And it was just wonderful. The kids are all right. You guys are doing great things, and it's just been a joy. The best collaboration I've had in a long, long time with anyone. Really.
Thanks. I'm going to share that with them. Andrew, your thoughts, you're in that lovely bucolic setting out in the countryside. Give us the perspective from the county.
Yeah, everybody's rooms look great. The quality of the work is really fantastic all around. And for me, it's a really interesting expansion of poetry, where poetry is more traditionally for the eye or for the ear as words. This is adding layers and qualities to the poetic experience, which, can't help but make your mind wonder at, possibilities for enhancing the experience in different ways. So it's been really incredible to see people's vision and see how that realizes into digital spaces. And I'll also echo the congratulations to the team over at George Brown. You people have done a fantastic job. I can't wait to see the whole thing done and to allow everybody else to access it as well.
Rafaela, you know, you're sitting on the other side of the ocean and, you know, watching us North Americans with a critical eye, I'm sure. You know, what's your take on it, sitting, you know, in Milano? Rafaela, I think you might be on mute.
Luigi, I noticed there was another question.
Yes, no, so I think that now you can hear me. So Luigi was for me a real wonderful experience. And you know very well, I love poems. And I never could imagine to join a group like this one. Of course, be involved with Milan and Toronto. Toronto, you know, is a city that I love too. And was a very, very interesting experience. It was the first time that I have been involved in something that is also digital, no? Because I think that to write poems is a very intimate act, no? Is to be alone and to write, and that's it. So this was like to open myself and ourselves as group, no, towards others. So it's like also to realize this kind of sense of generosity, no? Because sometimes you write for yourself because you want to explore yourself, and not because you want to share your poems. At least this was my point. So it was a different step, this for me, and I really could enjoy my staying with you, and also to see the beautiful rooms that each of you created, because I saw for the first time today, you know, all the rooms, and they are really very interesting. Thank you very much for this experience.
You know, we have another question from Alana Thompson. Will there ever be an exhibition or public viewing of something in person? They're asking us if we're going to take this back out into the physical. Randy, what do you think?
Well, I guess it's up to George Brown to open their wallet on that, but I throw that challenge out there to you, Luigi. I mean, I'd love to see it, and perhaps in the new building.
Yeah, I'm just thinking we may need your expertise as an environmental graphic designer to help us with the exhibition. Samantha, I knew that you were wanting to say something.
Oh no! How exciting would that be? I mean, I know we've talked about making it part of public space, or just the idea of poetry as public space, not necessarily this exhibition, but you know, the more visual I think it is, you know, the more exciting it is. For me, I've always been a big fan of having people's thoughts represented in architecture, design, and public space, and so I think, you know, it would be great. So let's do it.
Let's do it.
There's another question coming, but before, here's the question: will there be public poetry readings once the campus reopens? Laurie, now I have to say, you know, it's nice to have these ideas, but you really couldn't make them happen without someone like Laurie. Laurie's been our point person, reaching out to everyone. The thoughts, Laurie, on public poetry readings. What do you think?
I love that idea because previous to this experience, for me, poetry's always been on the page. Or if I was very daring, I'd go in during the 90s, go into a poetry reading. But I haven't seen a lot of that happening in the public realm, obviously, for, you know, not just because of the pandemic, but it just didn't seem to be the main outlet anymore. So having this new space in the virtual world has been a great opportunity. But I think the next step should be that we start having poetry readings in person, outdoors, in public spaces, involving our students. That is the natural next step for us. And I hope that this event inspires more participation. whether it be our faculty, our community, our students. And that if people have ideas, that they send them our way, because that's what P8's all about. It is a true collaboration.
I can just see us taking over the waterfront for the DigiFest in spring, with us, in different public locations, reading our poems to people in the city, and actually having our students do projects like you mentioned, Lori, where they start the poem and maybe someone else finishes, or there's a poem relay. Jana, I know that you're one of the best readers of poems that I've ever run into. What's your sense about readings? You're like a veteran of readings, aren't you?
Well, like Andrew, I love performance. And being an elementary school teacher for 35 years, you had to become a performer just to keep their attention. So I've had 35 years of reading to the children, of doing poetry and theater with the children, so that it has stayed with me. And when I do a poetry reading, I don't want the people to fall asleep or be bored or think, oh man, maybe I should have gone for a hamburger. So I want to keep them interested and excited. And I work at it, because I think when you offer people your work, you want them to understand it and to enjoy it. So, it's just who I am and what I do.
Andrew, I know that you also perform, but your grandfather had a really special relationship to poetry. Do you want to comment on that?
Sure. Poetry runs several generations deep in my family. My grandfather, Marshall, was a teacher of English literature and poetry, an expert on modernist poetry, Pound and Eliot and Yeats and all of them. And his mother was an elocutionist, somebody who gave public performances of poetry and dramatic monologues and things like that. And then on the other side, a long tradition of Irish conversationalists and public speakers and poets and musicians. So I suppose, as they say, I come by it honestly. And it's been difficult, in the last year and a half, whatever, to be kind of stunted in our expressions, all being at home and not really doing public things. So I'm very much looking forward to the chance to do things physically in public again, not just virtually. As fun as this is, there's nothing quite like being with people. There's a special energy and a kind of feedback that happens, which is lost between a camera and a screen. So I'm very much looking forward to that.
Okay, I think we have another question that's come through. Would there be future collaborations with other literary or performance events such as Nuit Blanche, Word on the Street, or Artwork TO? I'd love to see us collaborating with Nuit Blanche. We did something a few years back with poetry where we interviewed people, and Lorian will remember this. We basically interviewed people, and then we had myself, my wife, and my two kids writing poems based on the interviews while they were getting their photographs done. And then the poem and the photographs were merged, and they walked away with an artwork. So I think it would be great to see collaborations, and especially, I think, between the literary community and the design community. It doesn't happen enough. It's something that I'd really like to see start up. Maybe we can foster that.
Luigi,
Randy, your thoughts?
Well, Luigi, I was just wondering if you had any thoughts on carrying this initiative further and linking up with other educational institutions around the world, maybe as part of an international poetry day or something much grander on a worldwide stage.
Yeah. So when we get back to campus in January, I think one of the key things, I'm going to be sitting with the chair of design, Ana Rita Moraes, and the chair of media, Trent Scherer, and we're going to be looking at how do we bring this kind of activity into our students' lives, right? And how do we get them thinking beyond the narrow confines? You know, they are so technically able, our students, we train them so well, but how do we get them reaching out and beyond and being more conceptual? Samantha, you know, you used to teach a lot at Ryerson. What are your perspectives on that, especially with design students?
Well, I always encourage the students to reach out into other areas to incorporate that into their projects, because it stretches their creativity. And one of the things that I always told them is find two things that are completely unrelated and then attempt to relate them. And that's like a true creativity exercise. And a lot of students would use the idea of poetry or words in their projects, which, you know, of course, made me very happy as a professor. But I would love to see us, you know, even if some of the professors are willing to do a project with poetry and design or architecture, and not just our schools here, but of course, you know, in other universities as well. I think it would be very exciting.
Well, Rafaela, you're also teaching at the Politecnico and at CAEA. Do you think you guys would want to participate?
I think maybe, not maybe, I'm sure about the students from Politecnico, because they are very also theoretical. From the School of Design, yes. From CAEA, it's very, very difficult because they are very technical and not prepared to understand maybe some theoretical issues, etc. But surely from the School of Design at Politecnico, they will be very happy to participate. And it's exactly what I try to do with my course at Design in Landscape, trying to involve also literature and poems and how to understand public spaces related to feelings. So they used to do that. And I think that they will be very happy to be involved in that, surely.
And Laurie, some product, you run our studio lab and our in-store. Do you think we'll have poetry on our products?
I think the idea of integrating any other discipline with poetry now is a good idea. I'm completely sold on it. But yes, I would love to see words falling off of t-shirts, completely designed by students, and having spontaneous maker labs where we create in real time, in real space. So for example, we have this wonderful printer guy who can come and set up a portable printer. We could be writing in real time and immediately making it into products. So it would be so spontaneous that I think the results would be fantastic.
Yeah, we have another question coming in saying also, would this be something open to certain age groups, or is it for all ages? Anyone want to take that?
All ages, all ages.
All ages. Of course.
You know, I'm 25.
All ages are
age. Numbers are just numbers.
Yeah, I would love to see elementary school teachers, school children participate.
It's never too early or too late to start.
Never.
Definitely. I mean, even in my book of poetry I put out this year, it starts with a poem that my son said to me on my lap when he was 3 years old. So well before he could write. So I think poetry is open to all ages. And I think in terms of getting students involved, it'd be a great idea to have each of these poets all spend a little bit of time with classes to give them the benefit of their experience, because every poet has a different technique, different styles, different experience that can all be lent to help people who have maybe never written a poem before and might be a little afraid to, but anybody can do it, even a 3-year-old.
I have to say, one of the things I remember most about visits back to my parents' town in Italy is whenever there was an event in the town, whether it was, you know, a 50th anniversary wedding celebration or a birthday party, someone would get up and say a poem, either recite a famous poem, like I've been seeing you do, Andrew, also on your Facebook feed, or a poem that they made themselves to commemorate the occasion. So we got to bring poetry back into our lives. I think that's what P8's about. And I just want to personally, from the bottom of my heart, thank all of you. You're such talented people that you've given time to this and that you really believe on the transformative power of poetry in our lives. So I think thanks. I think I'm going to hand it back to Parmida. And Randy, thank you for your moderation and facilitation of the session. And just thanks to all of you. In bocca al lupo, and we're going to do more.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Randy.
Luigi.
Thank you, Luigi. Thank you to all of you. Ciao.